I am so excited to announce that iDriveAClassic is now sponsored by Adrian Flux, one of the UK's leading classic car insurers. If you're looking for classic car insurance, I've popped a link to Adrian Flux in the description box below. Hi guys, it's Steph from iDriveAClassic, and today I'm back and I wanted to show you what I've been doing in my spare time. And it all started way back when, a couple of weeks ago, and I was driving down the M1, well, up the M1, that little bit near Sheffield where it's a bit of a hill, and the car went, ooh. I thought, oh my God, please be something easy. So I got home, I changed the HT leads, I changed the spark plug, and I actually did this little test. So I swapped the spark plug round because by the time I'd got home, I could hear it was only running on 3. So I swapped the spark plug because I worked out it was second, because you can do this quite quickly by taking the HT lead off, and if it still sounds like it's running on 3, that's the one you know it is. So I knew it was number 2. So I swapped the spark plug between 1 and 2, and it was worse, which meant that it was obviously something going on number 2. So then I decided to compression test it. So I got a compression tester, tested all the way through. It was sitting at about 130 to 150 on number 1, 3 and 4, but when I tested number 2, it was coming back as 0. So I thought, well, there's nothing that I can do immediately to try and solve this. So I thought, well, it's going to be a cylinder head off job. So we took the cylinder head off, and there was a chip out of the exhaust valve, and I thought, what other damage has been done? But thankfully the British Leyland gods were looking down on me, and that was the only thing. So I took it to a friend and I said, well, what do I do now? Because do I change this valve? What do I do? And he said, do you know what the best thing to do is to send the head away for machining. And there's nobody better to talk about it than my friend Kev, who took it off. So with no delay, I'll hand you over to Kev, and he'll talk to you about what the machine shop did with the cylinder head.
Hi, Kevin Hurst here again. Just going to go through everything that's been done on the cylinder head. The cylinder head has been away to a machine shop that specialise in not necessarily vintage things, but modern cars as well. They've been there for 40 odd years. They know exactly what they're doing. So basically, this is the cylinder head as come back from the machine shop. It's had 4 brand new exhaust valves fitted to it, along with unleaded inserts into it to allow for unleaded fuel. Some of you will know at the moment there is another fuel that's coming through, an ethanol EN10, I think it is, or something. I can't remember, but this will prevent premature exhaust valve failure. It's also been skimmed, pressure tested, and it's ready to fit. You will not. This cylinder head is now better than when it left the factory in 1971.
Unfortunately, these videos have corrupted, so you're just going to have to get me talking over them. The first thing that I did was set these cylinders down to bottom dead centre. Now, there is a reason for this, and there is a method in my madness. So the next thing I did was grab this tin of grease, and I'm greasing the inside of the balls here. Now, the reason that we do this is because you need to make sure when we're scraping the top of that block, which I know is quite clean, by the way, you need to be making sure that you aren't scratching the inside of the balls, because it is going to be game over for you. So really slap it on like I do with my foundation every morning. So getting right in there, and it's cheap enough stuff, so apply it liberally, get as much as you can in there. You slap that grease in. Now you want to be getting some just old fabric or anything that isn't too fibrous, so just t-shirts or old shirt material, and just sticking it in there. And that's just extra protection along with the grease, but we're going to come back to that in just a minute, and we'll show you what you're going to do with that. I've personally never done it before, but Kev said he swore by it. Now, once you've done that, you just want to check between. Can you see just in there? Because quite often they crack or they get a bit of damage, so just check that, because the head's off, so make sure you check that block. Next thing, we're going to give it a little scrape. So I'm using a scraper here. So as you can see, you just want to make sure you've got all the old gasket off. If you don't, you are going to get premature gasket failure. Take the time to prepare now, because otherwise you're going to regret it later when you're going to a show or driving to work or chaotically late for everything as usual, like I am. So once you've done that block, swap over to the exhaust manifold. And again, you want to be getting right in there. And this actually was the trickier bit for me because it kept like flinging itself back at me. So in the end, I did end up using some cable ties to try and hold some of it back, which is in hindsight something that I would recommend you do. But remember, you do need to be careful because of course you need to keep everything flat and straight, because if you're digging in and you're really kind of upsetting that flat face, you are going to end up with problems later on. The remaining gasket on this one was a bit tricky, so I used a flat face and then some 80 grit sandpaper, and I went back in and just cleaned it right back, because remember, we don't want that premature gasket failure. We need everything to work because this is taking a lot of time. Now that took me probably about half an hour, and then I went back in with this snazzy air blower. So as you can see, I'm just blowing inside there, and what I want to do is just get all the grit out and get all the debris out, because if it's left in there, it's going to go into your engine and it's going to upset everything. So you want to be getting that as clean as possible. If you don't have a snazzy air blower at home, what you can use instead is just a brush or whatever. So sorry, camera work's a bit dodgy here, but you get the drift. Now, once I'd cut my hand and I was just absolutely over the job and I'd cleaned everything off, it was time to get this fabric back out. So what you want to do, just wipe around there and just get all the grease out. Now, of course, turn that round, make sure that you've had every cylinder to the top, cleaning it all out, and you just want to make sure it's absolutely clean as a whistle. This is really, really important because anything that you've left in is going to come a cropper later on. So get it right now. Next thing I do is I go in with brake cleaner because we're doing another good clean. Remember, it's all about the prep. So spray this liberally, a bit like I do with hairspray, and make sure you're getting in there. The next thing is you want to just clean it all round again. So it may look like we're being quite fastidious with this, but remember, I keep talking about it, it's the preparation. So you can probably see that there's a bit of griminess on that back cylinder. So what I actually went in and did, because I had a look at it and I thought at first that it was fine, and then I thought, right, I'm not doing a half job here. I'm actually going to go back in and clean it. So I went back in again and did that. But for the purpose of this video and keeping everything quite straightforward, you want to be doing your brake cleaner, cleaning it all off, and just making sure that it's all out and ready to go. I'm actually fitting a composite gasket today, so I'm not going to need anything between this and the block, and I'm also not going to need to torque it down again after one heat cycle like I would do with a copper gasket. So I'm just popping that on, and I knew which way it went as well because I kind of pointed it out earlier, but it had the writing, so you just basically work it out like that. So fitted that on. So I cable tied these wires up because they were doing my absolute head in, and I just thought if there's one more thing on this project that's going to throw me over the edge, I'm absolutely going to lose it. So then I decided to get the cylinder head on. Unfortunately, the sound on this video is corrupted, but you missed an absolute golden opportunity moment where I'm about to drop the cylinder head onto my fingers and Kev's screaming at me from the side, which is just such a sad magic moment that we've missed out on here. But anyway, it took me a bit of jimmying to get this on. I've not really done this before and I was a bit stressed, but anyway, as you can see there, it took me a couple of attempts, but it wasn't that difficult. You've just got to make sure that you're not bending or warping anything and being just very careful there. Then we're going to put the exhaust manifold gasket in there. We're not going to tighten that down yet. We'll come back to that and I'll talk to you that in a little minute. Then we've got the push rods, so they're numbered 1 to 9. We did this when we took the head off a couple of weeks ago, so those just still in there. Number them up, put oil across all of these, just keep oiling everything up, it's great. And then you need to put all your push rods back in, so you've got them running from 1 to 9 there, just pop them all back in, and then we move on. And then you want to be putting that rocker shaft back in. So I mucked this up quite a few times actually. This was probably one of the hardest bits for me, weirdly. Now, we've talked all the way through about preparation being key and paying attention to the little things. And one of the little things that I wanted to make clear to you was that when you're putting this back together, on the second one in on this rocker shaft, you've got this little locking plate. And the little locking plate is really important because if you don't put that back on, what will happen is the rocker at the front will twist and it will starve the top end of top end of the engine of oil. And what that then means is something which would took 2 seconds to put on means that you're going to basically screw your own engine up. So just make sure when you're doing this that you put that back on. It is so important. So what I've done now is I've gone through and I've put all the head bolts on. I've just hand tightened those up. I wanted to get through it dead quick because I don't want this video to be megally long, because if you're watching from home and you're trying to follow along, I just want to make that clear. Now what we're going to do is we aren't going to tighten these up, so that's really important. That's not going to do that first. We're just going to run them up, and what we're using for that is we're just using a speed brace. So if you haven't got that at home, you can just wing it, but this is going to make the job a little bit easier. When we come to tighten it down, we'll talk about the torque wrench and the setting and stuff, but right now we're going to do this. Now I've got this book here which Kev actually gave me as a present. He spent all of £1 on it apparently. It shouldn't have given that away because I thought it was I definitely thought it would cost him more. Now what I've got inside this book here, and this is great because of course this is the workshop manual, it teaches me how to torque the head down. It teaches me how to run the head bolts down as well, because it is in order. So even though this head isn't made of paper, you know, it may not seem flimsy, you do have to tighten it in a certain order, because what can happen is you can get a slight warp. So of course we've spent that money, and you'll be looking at around £300 if you're getting your head done like I have here today, and all that money is wasted because of course you've just cocked it up at the last second. So the tightening, as you can see, we've got the diagram here. It's going to tell me how to tighten down. I do follow it through, so it just tells you in which order you need to do it. So if you're doing this at home, that is a very, very important detail. Don't get that wrong. So I'm going to tighten this down now. Armed with my trusty workshop manual to the left hand side of me, I use it as a reference guide for when I'm tightening this down. So it's really important. I know I keep stressing it, but it is really, really important. So very quick, as you can see that I'm not tightening them, you know, left to right or anything like that. There is an order and I am following it. So if you're doing this at home, you absolutely need to follow the order guide that's in your manual, because it's absolutely crucial to getting this right and making sure that you don't warp the head. The next thing I'm going to do is just check that the rockers are in. So it's just give it a quick shake. If anything feels loose there, you'll be fine. Now something that I forgot to say when I was running the bolts down was that you may have noticed I kept going back to 1 as my central point, because when you're looking down, and if you're a novice like me, it can sometimes be a bit like, oh my god. So I remembered which one 1 was, and then I was just correlating that with the diagram. So it might seem a bit basic to some of you at home that are a bit more accomplished, but for me that's really helped, and if it's your first time, that might be helpful to you too. Okay, so we're going to get this on now. I swore at Kev the first time I did it, but actually that's gone on nice and neatly, so that's good. Right, excellent. Now because there's a gap between the inlet and the exhaust manifold, you do need to be using these spacers. So if you've taken them off, do not lose them. So you want to be using these, and then because we've got the copper nut, we don't need to be using the spring washer, we've got this. So we're going to put these on. Now we've got 4 of these, so make sure, again, it's these little bits that I think you can come unstuck on quite easily. We've put those washers on and we've torqued those down, and when we did that, we worked from the inside out. So remember when we were talking about warping things, that's one of the reasons that we do that, and you must make sure you do it like that. So of course now we need to torque down the head, which is why I've got this handy torque wrench in my hand. Now to do that, we're just going to set that to 50 pound-feet, and I got this measurement from the workshop manual. So if you're doing a Marina yourself, or you're doing something where you've got different engine variants, just check that it is the same for all of them. I didn't check for the B series, but yeah, so I've set that to 50. Get this back on and I'll show you. So again, we're going to torque down in sequence. Now remember, when we're tightening this up, we need to be listening for the click, so you hear what I mean. So that tells us that we then move on to the next one. So we know we've done 1, 2, we then move on to 3, which is up here. Something I forgot to tell you as well is once we talked down the whole head, we went back over it in that same sequence just to check everything was 100% tight. A little thing to note, but it's something that you should definitely do and it's really good practice. So now we're going to adjust the valve clearances. Now I'm going to talk to you about the number 9 method. So this only applies on a 4-cylinder engine. If you're working on 6-cylinder or something else, just check, because this will only apply to the 4-cylinder. So my tools, what have I got? I've got a 7/16 spanner, I have got this screwdriver, and I've also got a feeler gauge. Now the feeler gauge is actually a metric set, couldn't find any imperial. So what we're going to do is, it gives me, because it's the joyous 70s in the era of everything crossing over, it gives me metric and imperial in this workshop manual, and it's said to use 0.3 mils. So what I've done is I've got that all set up already. Now I keep looking down at the book because I'm working very much out of the book today, and you know what, it's so much better than a Haynes manual. I absolutely love this. So what we've got to do is, for the number 9 method, is when number 8 is down, number 1 is ready for us to adjust, and then it would be the same for 2 and 7, 3 and 6, 4 and 5. My maths was so bad that's taken 2 takes to get that right. Okay, so this is my 3rd take at doing this, because this is the bit that I'm finding the hardest, and I wanted to be honest with you, because there's no point struggling and making out like everything's easy if it's not. So as you can see, we just need to, can you see there, it's sliding about a bit. I've slightly adjusted it because I wanted to show you. So we know that that is there. So what you want to do is you need both your spanner, might help if I called it its right name, you need your screwdriver and your spanner at the same time to be adjusting this up. So you want to hold that in place, because otherwise it will turn the whole thing, and that might be, that's too tight now. So if you see when we're talking about sliding, as I said, this is the hardest thing that I've had to do. So you see there, that's perhaps a little bit, I'm just going to turn it a little bit more. See if we get that right now. Might just tighten that up a tad. It is a bit of an art, this. It's not the easiest thing. Might help if I turn it the other way. I'm such an idiot. There we go. I reckon that's probably about right. Yeah, so if you see, could maybe do with a smidge more. I think this is one of those things that you probably just get better at as you go along. At the end of the day, you're not going to get any better if you don't just crack on and do it, are you? So if you can see, that's a sliding fit. So it's not catching it, it's just a sliding fit. But you want it to feel relatively tight. So we pull that out, and that one is done. So we know that's done, and now we're going to move on to number 2. So that was the bit of the video that I was dreading the most, and it took me about half an hour. There was a few false starts and I had to go back over. So that's one thing I should say as well, actually, is that we talked about going back over your head in terms of checking that you've torqued it down properly. Go back over and just check that you've got all those valve clearances right as well. It's a 2-second job on top of the half an hour of faffing, but it's really important, because if you get that wrong, the whole job's just going to feel like such a farce by the time you put it back together and the car's not running right. And I will mention as well that you've got these locking nuts on top of here. So you've got these 4 here. Now, for goodness sakes, check that they are tight. And I say this because, as someone who is slapdash to a T, I would just be like, nah, they're fine, and just crack on. But as we said all the way through, it really is the devil's in the detail on this, I think, to get right. And I think that by doing these good preparations and getting these bits right, it means that if there's a problem, you can unpick fairly quickly and work out where you've gone wrong. And so far, it's taken me about 2-3 hours. But, you know, I'm a novice, and I think it's not a bad job so far. I think I've done pretty well, and I haven't cried, I haven't sworn too much, and I haven't trapped my fingers. So I think the next thing to do is we need to lube up that the rocker cover gasket, pop that on, pop the rocker cover on, and then we're almost done. So I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel now. Right, so we have now got to the point of putting the rocker cover gasket on, and what we need to do is, here's one I prepared earlier. So if you can see there on the camera, I've greased that up fairly well. Stuck my hands in this, but I'll tell you what, not the worst thing I've ever stuck my hands into. And so what you want to do is, when you're popping that on, you want to be not troweling it on, but you want to make sure it's got a fairly good covering. And the reason for that is because you need it to stick to both the cylinder head and the rocker cover as well. So that's really important, so get that fully covered. It's like me troweling my makeup on in the morning, but less chaotic. And then I'm going to stick this onto here. As you can see, now I messed this up the first time, because the first time I did this, I actually stuck it down to the head, and Kev was like, no, you need to be sticking it down to the rocker cover first. So if you, like me, have made that same mistake, but can you see there, can you see the importance of that grease at home, in that it's helping it to stick? If I tried to, I should have tried to show you it dry, but you can see there that the importance, and it's almost like just a little bit of help there. So I'm going to pop that on there, and we're going to pop this back on. So we're going to get these spark plugs in now. Now I'm putting the tiniest, if you can see here, I'm putting the tiniest bit of, God, I'm terrified to get this wrong. Might help if there we go, got a little bit there, see there? Now what I'm doing is I'm just doing that because it helps it to go in, but you don't want to get it all over because it will flood it off. So we're going to come in, and what we're going to do is we're going to hand tighten this. And one of the key things on this is you don't want to rock the thread, because it is a nightmare. So there you go. Tell you what, I did not expect to get to this point without a few tears. So just going to repeat that for all these three, and we'll see you in just a moment. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get these tightened up. Now when you're putting it on, I'm just going to show you something. Sorry if this is quite basic stuff for people at home, but if you see down, I don't know if you can see down into there. Now when you put it on, you don't want to put it at an angle, you want to get it straight on and down. The reason for this is because you see this white, that's porcelain. So if that cracks or breaks, you are in for one hell of a nightmare. And you didn't get this far to be thwarted at the last hurdle. So not too tight, but tight enough. Again, I remember the first time I did this, I was very cautious, and I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't tighten them down enough, and the car was like, poof, 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 poof. I was like, oh my God, what have I done wrong? And it was literally just that I hadn't tightened these down properly way back when. But we all learn. And I'm by no means saying this video is perfect, but I wanted to show you what I do at home, because I think quite a few people think that I just lark about on silly little adventures, and actually I do put my back into it when I need to. So we need to pick off the old gasket off here. So I know the natural reaction is to do this, but actually for health and safety you're supposed to do it that way. However, I'm doing this myself at home, so actually no, I'm not going to chop my thumb off. The NHS is already under pressure, it doesn't need me adding to it. So we just need to get all this off. We'll be sweeping up afterwards, don't worry. So just get this off. I'll speed this up because no one needs to sit at home watching me scrape gasket off this. Nobody's Sunday is that boring. And what I'm now going to do is reassemble it all. So I thought I'd show you what we've got here. So we've got the thermostat. If you're ever in doubt as to whether a thermostat is working properly or not, you can put that in a see-through like Pyrex bowl of boiling water and see if it opens. Just a little bit of a check there. So we're placing that down like so. Then we've got the gasket. Now this one, unlike when we did the rocker cover, we don't need to be using grease on this. So we're just going to get that on. It's not fitting very well. So we're going to put this on like so. And it's, oh, I could scream, just fit, please. Oh, you know when you're like, does it go around the other way? And you know full well that it doesn't. And you're just stressing yourself out. So just going to get that. There we go. Bit more brute force. Now I'm just going to go and grab, I've got my nuts here. Again, it's just all about that hand tightening. God, I hope I don't actually do this again for a while. So it's been nice weather and I'm working indoors, and I just think it could be worse. Could be like last time, in the winter, in the dark, crying. Like, that was not one of my finest moments. Right, we've been at this for hours, and it's down to the final thing. So of course there's been a few bits that I haven't filmed, things like all the filling up of the radiator, going round, checking everything is tight. So even though we've checked it at every stage of the game, you just want to go back round and check everything that's visible and that it's all right, because now is the time to spot a mistake, not when you're out on the test drive or starting it up. So last thing is we're going to put the air filter back on. Right, we're going to take her out for a test drive now. Oh my god, I'm so pleased to be back in my car.